Hey guys, we're going to be creating another form today to create teams, and we're also going to deal with some authentication because you need to be a logged in user to create a team. So the first thing we're going to do is set up a new route and set up the form, and then we're going to protect it with authentication. So first thing first, like I said, we're going to create a new route here, and I'm going to call it create team.js. Oops. And I'm pretty much just going to copy the login. So if you preferred how we did it with the register, you can use state. I'm just going to use mobx because that was pretty easy, a little less boilerplate code I felt. So we're going to set up another form here, and I'm just going to copy over the login. And I'm going to call this guy create team. Oops. Create team. And for this, we only have one field, the name of the team. And we're also going to have errors, so we can keep this here. We'll come back to when we submit the form, and our on change is good. So this, we don't know, I guess we'll have a name error. And we'll keep this we could just show one error in this, but it's possible we have more fields we want to add later in our application, so it's good to keep it like this for now. Why not? So this will be name, and then our errors list. We're really just going to check for name error. And I'm going to get rid of this field right here. We're going to only have one, which is a name. And then we're going to keep the on change, and the value is going to be the name placeholder is going to be name fluid. Submit is good. There was an error with your submission. We're showing that error. Here we have a login mutation. We want to change this to a create team mutation. So I'm going to call this create team because that's our new component, and create team mutation. Alright, so we need to actually write the code for this, or the GraphQL code for this. And then once we do that, we can call our onSubmit. So here is what our schema looks like on the back end for creating a team. You pass in the name of our team, and it returns a boolean. But really I want to return something like this, where I can return a list of errors as well. So I'm going to copy this, paste it over here. I don't really care about these things, and really I don't really need to return anything when I'm creating a team. So I'm going to call this team response, and I'm going to say create team response, because we might have other responses where with teams. So create team response, and so just an OK, and then if we get any errors. So then in our resolver over here, we need to change that to reflect this. So here we're going to say OK is true. Otherwise, we're console logging the error, and we're going to say OK is false, and then our errors. And now we want to call that format errors function, passing in error. And format errors is not in here, but is in, oops, not in our schema, but our user resolver. So what I'm going to do is, I think I'm just going to create a file over here called format errors, and I'll just move that guy over there. So change, and I'll just export default. And this guy needs Lodash, so I'll import Lodash. And that looks good. So in our user over here now, we're going to import that. And we don't need either of these libraries anymore. So import format errors from up a file format errors. Alright, and we're going to copy this, paste it in our team up here. Alright, so now our team mutation looks pretty good, and I don't see any errors, so that looks nice as well. So I'm going to come over here, just go to localhost 8081/graphical, and we're going to type up our mutation. So mutation, we want to grab a name, which is a string, and we're going to create a team, passing in our name, string, and we pass in our name object. And here we want to see OK, and then any errors that we get. The path and the message are helpful. So copy that, and we're going to put that down here. So instead of this stuff. And let's tab this over. Okay. So now when we submit the form here, there's really only one variable we're feeding in, the name. So when I come up here, I only care about the name, and so we're going to feed the name in here as a variable. And then response, there's only going to be two things, OK and errors, and response.data.login. The name of ours is called create team, so that's what's going to be called right here. So I'm going to call this create team. And then if this was OK, we can just push to the home page. That's fine if we create the team. Later we might want to go to a different page, but this is fine for now. And then else, if we get any errors, we're just going to loop through, add the errors, then show the errors. So this looks pretty nice. But there's one last thing we're forgetting. We only want to allow people to fill out this form that are logged in users. Okay, we're not getting errors. I just want to make sure the form resolves, and then we'll fix that error. So let's make this a route too. I forgot about that. So let's make this the, I guess we can call it create team, and create team. Alright, so now we can take a look at our component we just made. Token, refresh token, I got rid of those, I think. Alright, so we see our form here. It says login. Let's change that to create a team. Alright, no errors in our console. So when I add a team like team1, if I were to submit this right now, what would happen is it would work, I believe. Let's see. Yep, it worked okay. And the reason for that is I think we are logged in, and we actually hard coded the value on our server. So here we are setting the user ID to 1. Now we no longer want to do that. We want to take the user by whoever's logged in and by looking at their token right here. So now we want to pass the token to our server every time we make a GraphQL request. And then our server can look at that token and then do stuff with it. What it's going to do is it's going to decode it, and it's actually going to put it in the context for our resolvers to use. So how do we pass this token to our GraphQL server? One way to do it is actually to change our resolver. So here what I could do is say token, which is a string, and pass it in here. But this is not the only thing that I want to make, have users logged in to do, right? For example, for my channels, creating a channel, you need to be logged in to do. So I don't want to pass in the token on every mutation that I need to be logged in to be, because that's a lot of waste. So another way to do this is to pass it in as a header. And then what you do is you read that header in your server and you pass it in. And that's actually what Apollo recommends. So what we can do is take advantage of some middleware So before every request, what we're going to do is we're going to check local storage and add a header. So we're going to copy this, and I'll show you how this works. So this is going to be in our index page, not that one, this one. So where we set up the client. So our network interface deals with making requests to the server, to our GraphQL server or localhost. So every time we're making a request, what we're going to do is we're going to apply middleware, and this is going to run. So we can get rid of these comments. So first thing we're doing is just creating an object for the headers if it's not there. Then what we're going to do is we're going to grab the token here from local storage and then set that as a header. Now what I like to do is just call it request.options.headers x-token, and x is a prefixing the tokens like this is just saying x- is a kind of something people do to say this is a custom header that I am adding. So it's kind of like a standard that I've noticed, so I do it as well. So refresh-token. Refresh token. So we don't need to do any of that. So this will send to our server every time we make a mutation or a query for that matter. It's going to grab it from local storage, put it in the header, and this is going to be shipped off to our server. So now on the server side, we want to read these tokens in. So what we're going to do is add some middleware here. And this is some middleware that I've been using for a while now that I really like. I call it add user. So we're going to copy this in here, and I'll explain how this guy works. So here's our add user function, and all I'm going to do is say app.use add user, and what that will do is now it will use this middleware. And what this middleware does is it looks at the X token header which we sent along, and it just checks if there was a token given to us. If not, that's okay, we don't do anything, right? If they don't send us a token, we don't have to do anything. We don't have to set any values. And I'm just going to import JWT. So import JWT from JSON web token. But if they do give us a token, we know they are possibly a user. So what we do is we first have a try catch block. We verify their token using the secret, and notice we're using the same secret that we used to sign the token. So if I come over here to auth, you'll notice I'm using a secret guy here, and this secret guy here is used up here when I'm creating the tokens. We pass it to this guy, and he's signing the token with that. So it's that same secret we verify. And what it's verifying is that the token has not expired and it was signed with the secret. And if it is, we have a user. So notice how we pass the ID in here. So now we know the ID of the user. So what we do is we say request.user is equal to user. So then down here in our context, what we can do is notice how app.use here, we don't have access to our request object. But GraphQL Express, we can just add a little guy right here. He can be a function. So save that, and now instead of user here as a hard code value, we're going to say request.user. So if we don't have a token, this is going to be undefined, so our user is going to be undefined. So in our resolver, we know they are an undefined user and we don't care about them, basically. Otherwise, we're setting the user based on this user token, or this user that we have in their token. Now you notice there's a bunch of stuff right here in the catch block. This is if the user, if the token's not valid. It's possible that they give us an expired token, and that's why we have a refresh token. So we read in the refresh token from our headers, and then we refresh the tokens, or at least we attempt to refresh the tokens. So this is where we call refresh tokens, and I'm just going to import that in. Import refresh tokens from /auth. Passing in our token, our refresh token, our models, our secret, And we're also going to pass in secret2 for this because we have a secret for our regular token and a secret for our refresh token. And then what's going to give us is new tokens. So notice I'm actually checking whether the tokens are good, because if they give us a bad refresh token, we don't actually give them new tokens. And then new tokens also passes back a user. So what we will do is set the request.user to that. So we'll see what's happening in this function in a second. But notice how I also have this chunk right here. I just created new tokens, so I need to tell my client that I just created him new tokens. So what I do is I set an X token, refresh token back as headers. So when I send the response back, I send to the client the new tokens where they can set it in local storage. So right now we're not handling this, but that's something we will add in a second. And I have to expose these headers right here so they have access to them. Okay, so how am I refreshing tokens? So this is an auth, and here's our refresh tokens, and I want to grab a secret2. Alright, so we're just setting user ID to -1, and then here we are decoding the refresh token. So notice here I'm not looking at the secret or anything. All I'm doing is trying to grab the token. I just want us to get the user ID from the token, and then I set that to the ID. If I get an error, I just return this because they didn't give me a valid token. We're done. So if you're not too familiar with JWT tokens, you can actually see the payload or the value of them without knowing the secret. So we don't even, because if you remember how we signed the refresh token, we actually signed it with the password plus the secret. So down here, user.password plus secret. So to verify this, which you'll notice we do down here below, we actually need to pass in the password and secret too. So, but we first have to get the user to get their password to verify it. So we decode it, look at the payload, we have the user, we make sure that there is a good user ID, if not we return, and we can just set this makes more sense. Let's set this to 0, right? So if we don't get a good user token here, then we return nothing. Alright, so const user is equal to, so here's where we actually fetch the user, where we're just saying the user ID here, and you notice I just say raw. That's just so we don't get a SQLized object back, and if we don't get a user, we return nothing. So now we know that we have the user associated with this. So what we can do is we can verify the refresh token, and if it's valid, it hasn't expired too. And here's where we pass in the secret. So we know the secret is, user password plus secret2. And we can just say const refresh secret is equal to user.password, because we're going to use this twice. Alright, and then also when we create tokens, we pass in the refresh secret. So you guys have seen what create tokens does, and then we create the new tokens and we just pass them back. So that's how refresh is working. So that's all well and good. So in our team, if you remember, we're already grabbing the user and setting the user ID, so we're good here. Nothing we have to change there. That's just how we are actually grabbing the user now. So next, what I want to do real quick is handle this on the client side. So the way we can do this is we are using middleware here, which is run before we make a request. We're going to use afterware, which is run after a request. So copy this, paste it in here. So apply middleware, or apply afterware, what it does is we get a response object back, and we can actually look at the headers. And what we can do is we can say const token is equal to headers.get refresh x token, and then here refresh token is equal to x dash refresh token. And then we need to check, because we're not always sending back these tokens, right? Notice how we're only doing this if we get an error. So we need to make sure that we actually get a token back. Then we say local storage.set item token is equal to token. And same thing here. Alrighty, so we're now covered on authentication here. Now we're not checking whether the user can even access this page yet, and we're not stopping the user from, like, basically if I log out and I try to access this page, it'll work just fine. So that's a problem we'll fix in a second. But first, let's come over to team and see now, because I want to show you guys, we hard coded the value 2. So if I go to pSQL and I select connect to Slack and I select all from teams, okay, actually maybe it was the owner was 1. So I don't know who I'm logged in as right now, but we should see a different value than 1 to verify this does work. Oh yeah, this is called create team. So actually I'm gonna just log in, make sure this is legit, and I forgot what my user is, so I'm just gonna create a new one. Email, I'm gonna say bob@bob15.com, and I'm gonna use the same thing for my password. Alright, that worked correctly. We'll go to login. Alright, so now our credentials are set in local storage, and this is create team. Now when I'm going to create a team here, it should create it under the user Bob15. So Bob team. Hit submit. Looks like it worked okay. Now when I come over here and I select, we have an owner of the ID 16. So let's select all from users where ID is equal to 16 and see who the user is. And sure enough, the user is Bob@Bob15. So that's the user we just created. So just to show you guys this is truly working, we could create another guy. So register. We'll call this guy that. This will be Bob16. And now we can log in with Bob16. Whoops. And now I come over to my create team. The team created good. Now we have owners number 17 because we logged in with a new user and we see Bob16. So now we're able to, depending on who's logged in, we know who the user is and create a team with the correct owner. And so now we can replicate this across all our mutations whenever we're creating a channel, creating a message, all of that. We know who the user is easy. So that's really nice. And that is where I'm going to stop this video. But what's coming up next is if I log out, for example, I come over here to create team. I do not currently have any credentials, but I kind of feel like I can create a team maybe. Okay, that's really good. It doesn't let me. But notice we don't get like an error that says, hey, you can't create a team because you're not authenticated. Please log in. Because that's what we'd like to do if you are not logged in. And we know this guy's not logged in because he has no credentials here. So that's how we're going to handle what we're going to handle in the next video. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, the code is up on GitHub.